no level ever crossed my mind. It was just, I want to be doing this every day. I spoke to the manager, Chris Coleman, at the time. He told me that he knew Iain Dowie really well. Iain Dowie wanted me. It's a great opportunity, and we're here to try and ultimately succeed.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Daily Coaching Podcast, where we talk to players, managers and specialists within the game of football and coaching. I'm absolutely delighted today to announce a very special episode. Let me give you a little bit of a backlog on the person I have with me today. Today I have an ex-professional footballer who has played for teams such as Crystal Palace, Charlton, Cardiff and Huddersfield, as well as captaining those sides. And now he finds himself back at Cardiff as a first team coach. I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome Mark Hudson. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to the conversation, seeing where it goes. But at the moment, all good.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mark. Well, listen, what I always do is, and I'm going to try and change it a little bit, I always typically have asked people, how did you get into football? But I think that sometimes with that sort of questioning, the answers are a little bit limited. And, typically we find ourselves taking similar routes into the game, such as grassroots, or it might be recreational. So I kind of want to delve a little bit deeper into that and understand why. Why was it that you got into football in the first place?
I think from as early as I can remember, I had a football, and whether that was in the garden or any sort of playtime or any toy that there was, it was always just the opportunity to be outside, I suppose, and be with friends. I think playing football was such a young age. I think I couldn't tell you the age I was when I sort of have these memories of. You just remember having the enjoyment, and it was all based around having a football. And I think that really has always stayed with me. There are sort of phases you go through, right? You're at a career and it's difficult, and form goes, and there's a lot goes with football. But I think the whole thing I've remembered all the way back to when I was, like I said, earliest 4 and 5. Just remember just being with the football and being with mates and just enjoying the whole thing.
Yeah, no, it's class. And do you think that was a individual decision? So do you think it was kind of like, one day you sort of got exposed to a football, or like you said, some sort of toy which you could just basically kick around and you made that decision? Or was it something that you saw maybe peers or family members or on TV?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say I would have watched anything on TV back then. I think I'd have been lucky to have had a TV. But I think, and I don't remember family members or like parents, or I just remember being in an environment that anytime I was with friends, there was a football involved. And when I think I joined a football, like you said, grassroots, when I was about 5. And it was just a sort of Sunday group, local, and I joined that football club. And I think that would have obviously been down to parents at the time to take me. And then it just went from there. And I just remember doing that. And obviously, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been taken to it. And just remember enjoying it. Apart from what the one standout memory when I think I was 5 years old and it was snowing, and I had to stay out to the very end. But I think that would be the only bit that I didn't enjoy growing up as at football.
No, it's quality. And it's interesting because, like, typically I always think to myself that, listen, there's the positives and there's some, well, not necessarily negatives, but, typically parents will get us involved in football. And sometimes people are very critical of that and will be like, they're too young, or are they getting them involved in football for their own kind of purpose or own reasons? But I suppose when you look at it kind of from a holistical approach, without your parents taking you to that environment, you wouldn't know individually whether or not that's something that you enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, listen, I don't think you make decisions when you're 5, 6, 7, 8. You just know that you enjoy something or you don't like it. And I think that's the overall feelings is don't enjoy it. And obviously then you'll get that. I think parents will all get that vibe from their children. I've got children, so I see it with mine. When they like something, they like something. When they don't, the interest isn't really there, and the drive to want to do it isn't really there. So I think if it wasn't for my parents, and it wasn't from obviously from about 10 years old, if it wasn't for my mum and my stepdad, then I don't think they had to drive me all over the country. And again, it's their sacrifice that helped me have the career that I've had. So if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I am now. So 100% parents and outside influence have a huge impact on young athletes' careers for sure.
Yeah, and like you said as well about the sacrificing element as well, like, do you know what, even if you look at it from the aspect of, say, for example, a parent or parents did get their child or do get their children involved in football, I wouldn't say for selfish reasons, but, you know, more so for the purpose of, oh, they should get involved in football. You know, at the end of the day as well, even if they do make that decision, like you said, the amount of sacrifices and commitments, whether it be on, like you mentioned, the sort of bad experience you had of where it was snowing, like, you know, parents go out in all sorts of weather. Bear in mind, you know, as players, we would be in our boots, we'd be in our kits. It wouldn't really matter if we get muddy. They're going in their, in inverted commas, ordinary clothes. Their cars are getting ruined.
I'm there now. I still get that now. So I've stood in all sorts of weather watching my eldest son play, and I remember certain images from when I was younger. I used to train on a Friday night, and I was probably been about 11 or 12. And again, it's all through the year, isn't it? And you think back to when cars didn't have all the electronical heated devices that you can have. I think my mum used to sit there with a blanket inside the car for the hour and a half that I was there on a Friday night, freezing, waiting for me to come back into the car to drive me all the way home. So I know, obviously, she went through it, and I know that obviously the amount of the parents that do it, it is the sacrifice that they put themselves out to help their children. Again, going back to, you don't know where they are at that age, players and kids, and what route they might take. But again, they're putting themselves in a position to make sure that you're enjoying yourself. And that's what it was.
No, 100%. And you know what, as you were saying that, I thought of one other thing as well, which parents probably had a nightmare over, obviously. And even back in my day as well, when I used to play football, it'd be, you obviously didn't have sat navs. So it'd be the old A to Z books. Right, let's go down. Right.
Yeah, there'd be a few pop out maps, a massive one. Be huge, just in the front of the car going, yeah, I think it's over here somewhere. And a regular occasion that was, yeah. Unless it was one that you knew well, it would be this pop-up map of just, I don't know, whatever area you were in.
100%. And also the car rallies as well, of people, like, you know, one person would know where they're going, so they'd lead, and everybody else would like follow. And if you get caught at a traffic light, it's either one or two things. I think parents either used to pull up at the side and would like wait for the rest of the cars, or you'd get lost. Yeah,
you lost it. Yeah. I remember being one that obviously, I don't know, it's obviously not that relevant, but I think I used to be one that I used to get so anxious if I was late or possibility of being late. And again, that's down to, I think obviously they made sure that you weren't, and they made sure that they were in a position to be right on time and you were there as well. So I just, on the odd occasion there was traffic or something like that, I just thought, I can't be late for this.
No, 100%. It's interesting. I'm going to come back to one of the points you just made there a minute ago about the sort of, like, you know, time wise and being on time and things like that, because I think it's interesting and something I want to pick up on about later in your career. But interestingly, so obviously you said you was playing football, you know, kind of like you said, around like friends and peers, and obviously you got the opportunity to go into sort of a grassroots team or a setting or environment. Did you notice much of a difference? Because what I typically find is that, like, children really enjoy playing football sort of unstructured, in inverted commas, and, you know, with freedom, and 1 minute you're playing goal, then you're playing up front, and then you're playing everywhere off walls. Like, did you find that same enjoyment in the transition from then going into a team where it was a little bit more structured?
I'm trying to think back. I think I didn't find it. I think if you look back to when I came through and then playing from such a young age all the way through, I think you do see elements of the game that become more technical, maybe. But I think the enjoyment of having a ball at your feet the whole time, it was always there. So I don't think there was too much structure that took away enjoyment, especially on my route. And that's only that I can speak on, is I think that when I went from, say, Farncombe as a young sort of 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old, and then Swindon, then order shots, like School of Excellence as it was called back then. So it was, you can imagine in the title, it's going to be certain skill-based activities that are going to be added in the older you get. And then it is, you see part of that in the training, and then the rest of it was more the enjoyment and the playing the game and just running around and getting as hot and sweaty as you could. So again, I think the game has changed obviously a lot since then. And I think it's a lot more structured in that element now. So, but again, when I came through, it wasn't that there wasn't too much difference in the age. This sort of, as my development age went forward, the game didn't become overly technical at that point.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think as well, you picked up a good point there about the element of like how it's changed now. I mean, like, number one, people are doing coaching as a career. Number two, the amount of people who have their qualifications, whether it be introductory level, or whether it be level 1, level 2, or UEFA qualifications. So I suppose the overall kind of knowledge, understanding, sort of, organization and structure has improved. And I'll put that in inverted commas, because bit hit and miss for some people in terms of improved, but in terms of that, just having a bit of a structure to the session, as opposed to where before it might be a couple laps around the pitch and then get into a match.
Yeah, I think obviously the game's moved forward so much, hasn't it? I think you look at where the elite level is now and what is taking players to get to that, with the knowledge of whether that be international coaches, international players, European players, foreign players coming into the English game, then there's an understanding of what it's taken different countries to get those players through. And I think then obviously the English games come on leaps and bounds as well. And I think that is, as always now, how young can we influence these young players to get them to possibly be, in 10 years' time, the next Messi, Ronaldo, for instance. So I think there's always that, for me, a bit too young, and it's overly focused on the pressure's too young. And again, that's just my feeling. But I think that has definitely changed a huge amount since, obviously, when I came through.
Yeah, no, 100%, and I'm fully with you on that about the sort of age groups and the perceived word of talent and the perceived word of ability. And again, let's be honest, football has always been a game of opinions, and I think now the opinions are going down to, well, as young as, like you said, the age of 5 years old. And I think actually, in saying that, like, when I think back, it probably was more on physical characteristics beforehand, as opposed to now it's on skill-based characteristics. So before, I mean, like someone like myself, really and truthfully, I was quite shy when I was younger. So for me, just playing football was enjoyment. But because I'm quite tall and big, it was automatically, right, well, you're a defender, you're a centre-back. I almost had no choice at all. Whereas now, they might take that into account, but I suppose they'd more so look at the technical ability of what you're doing with the ball than what you're doing off the ball, how you communicate with teammates, and all of those things combined together. So nice, it's definitely interesting. What I was going to pick up on then is, obviously you started in a grassroots team, and obviously, like you said, kind of throughout, as time went on, things got a bit more technical, but I suppose pretty much right, you was enjoying it, and you was probably getting more and more of a love for the game, which obviously is an important thing within the world of coaching and football. But when was it for you? Two things really. Number one, you kind of found out that, I am a defender. And number two, when you found out, like, I'm going on the route here, if things continue in the same way, to becoming a footballer.
I think I'd take the second one first and sort of roll with that one. I think along my route, I never thought 100% I'm going to make it. I never had that feeling. I knew that I wanted to. I knew that that's really all I ever wanted to do. So it wasn't as if I never thought, I'm going to get to that level. No level ever crossed my mind. It was just, I want to be doing this every day. And that is what I want to do. So even coming through from when you come into sort of youth team level and sort of the 13, 14, 15, it was still most part of you're just playing for. I was playing for Fulham at the time, and their club was sort of starting to move forward as well. And then I think when I didn't, I did stop enjoying it at one point, and then it was my stepdad said to me, "You're best off. You know what? You're best off doing. We'll speak to Fulham and go and play with your mates on Sunday league. They want you to come down. If you're good enough, you'll make it." And I did. I left. We spoke to Fulham. They said, "Well, we monitor you. We don't want you to go, but go and do what you feel. We think it might help as well," which obviously is testament to, I think it was Alan Cork at the time, and said, "Yeah, crack on." So I went and played for a year with my mates, Sunday league. Supposed to be 11-a-side. We ended up having 6, 7s and 8s, 9s turn up. Just, again, on a muddy field, playing, enjoyment, working hard for the game because we were always without a player or 2 or maybe 3. So there was that of just the freedom, again, of just having to just run as hard as you can and try and win the game. Whereas obviously I felt at that age, I'd done it for such a long period of time, and there was quite a bit of pressure coming with it. And ultimately I ended up going back to Fulham the year after. And there are lots of disappointments, don't get me wrong, that come with football. And I think without really thinking, taking those sort of pressures come with it. But when you get no's, or again, it's the game of opinions, this is all I ever want to do. So what you're saying to me is a no, but actually this is like, I'm going to do this. I've got to find a way to do this because it's nothing else really matters.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt. And I just remember feeling that. And a lot of this sort of, again, decision makers at the time, some were yes, some were no. And I just kept going. And then I managed to, I suppose, prove people wrong and prove certain people right, that they made the right decision to keep me on. And we talk about late developers, early developers now with young players coming through. And I suppose where I was, this sort of young, wiry centre half, a bit probably not coordinated as well at certain aspects when some were, but like a will and a drive to succeed. So I think that's what probably shone through for me for a long period of my career.
Yeah, no, it's quality. And do you know what? Like you said, like I haven't to experience no's, or I'm going to use this as a positive word, so don't mean it a negative word, but failure. I think failure is so important. Like, call me harsh, but when I'm doing coaching sessions, I want the children to fail. And what I mean by that is I want them to experience challenges that are put into the session where they have to make decisions, and they get those decisions wrong sometimes. Not all the time, but I want them to get the decisions wrong so that then they can understand those reflective points. Okay, why? First of all, why? Why did that happen? Second of all, how? How can I overcome that? Or how can I, recharge myself and get back to a state where I'm making really good decisions or effective decisions? I think, like the situation that you mentioned there was that little bit of a recharge of, let me drop out of this environment. Like you said, credit to Fulham, because there's so many clubs out there, like, well, say at the moment, but in general, who, they'd almost not let you go. It's almost like you're held prisoner. So to let you go, to let you come out of that environment, maybe it was that what you needed to maybe go, right, I've had my, environment where I'm enjoying it again. I'm having fun. Right now I'm ready to go. And that motivation's back to get back into the state of mind almost.
Yeah, I think you talk about, you can't have a fear of failure. I think you just can't have it. I think the whole, not just football and sport, I think even you have to fail to learn. And it's the word failure isn't, like you said, nothing to be afraid of or scared of. And that is ultimately how you get better at things. And what you want to create, and what you've talked about there within the coaching environment, is creating decision makers. And I think the more decision makers you can create in your team, in an environment that players are coming through, then they will ultimately be better players and people for it, because they're constantly making decisions. In life, you constantly make decisions. You have to learn from sometimes making the wrong ones, and then it's about making the right ones. So I think when you're coaching and the coaches are coaching, if you're creating sessions that can create as much decision making as possible within their structure, then you're ultimately going to get much better players within that.
100%. And again, it goes back to kind of some of the FA courses and just in general where people talk about the player, the person before the player. And in having that, my 4 big things is when people talk about, obviously you might have a particular topic you're trying to get out, but when I say what's the theme of the sessions, it's always one of 4 things. It's either around building relationships, building rapport, making decisions, or solving problems. And when you've got those 4 things, they're all 4 individual characteristics, which I personally believe you can take into any environment in life, like you mentioned about personal wise. And actually the only thing, and I say this lightly, but the only thing you have to really learn is the technical side of things. So whether it be the playing of the game, whether it be the knowledge of the game, so coaching wise, if you're in a totally different business, whether it's understanding the actual industry that you're in. So I think that, those 4 things generally and typically are good sort of ground fundamental core skills to help any sort of player develop along their way.
Yeah, of course, you have to build a level of rapport within your coaching group, your players, because you've got to create a level of trust, and they've got to know that what you're trying to deliver for them and help them along their way, that they're trusting what you're doing for them, that's going to make them better. I think if you can get that 2-way feel, then, like I said, you're on the way to developing better human beings and better players within that.
100%. So, like you said, you obviously went back into Fulham. Technically, I suppose you got your mind back into the place where it's, I'm going to give this another go, and like you said, I want this. I want to become a footballer. Then, obviously, I know as time has gone on, obviously, you left from Fulham and you went over to Crystal Palace. How did that transition happen? And then subsequently from Crystal Palace, I know you went out, you've done a few different loan moves along that journey as well.
Oh, that was before. So that was from Fulham. Yeah. So from Fulham, I went on loan to Oldham under Iain Dowie, and that was into League One at the time, and that was my first experience of it. And I think I hadn't really moved home, hadn't really left the area that much, within travelling, obviously, but not to go on my own, and go and live in Manchester or in around the Oldham area and have to play in an environment that it's all or nothing. The 3 points matter to the area, to the fans, to the football club, to the players that you're playing with, to the coaches that you're playing for. And I think, again, I needed it. I enjoyed it. I actually loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I loved being away and being in a group that are fighting for something every week, seeing the different characters that were in it and meeting the people that I did. And on my journey, I think it's a great thing. And I was supported by Fulham ultimately along that route, which is I didn't just get sent on loan and said, see you in whenever and come back. And if you do come back, you do come back. It wasn't one of them. It was, I spoke to the manager, Chris Coleman, at the time. He told me that he knew Iain Dowie really well. Iain Dowie wanted me. They'd had a conversation and they sort of both put it towards me. Chris Coleman has said, I think it would be a good idea. Then supported me and told me that he'd watch and follow and see how I got on. Any issues, feel free to contact me and we'll have that 2-way sort of open communication that some don't get, and I did. And I went and it was a success on my part, and it was something, again, I look back on and I think if I didn't have that, would it have been a different route? Would I have made it? I don't know, but I did, and I did have that route, and it was something that I felt I needed it. It was something that I think you learn so much from.
No, 100%. And do you know what? I love the way you framed that and put that about how much, and you can even say, like, hear it when it's coming out in your voice, of how much you enjoyed that experience. Because typically a lot of people do downplay loan moves or talk negatively on loan moves, because typically people will see it as, well, the club that you're at, not necessarily don't want you, but, you're not in the plans for that particular season or for the time being. So it's, can you go out on loan? Then sometimes I know when I've spoken to players in the past, they'll say that they've come down from a club which may be a league or league 2 leagues above, and they go into the environment and some of the players are like, oh, well, look, you're the Prem boy or the Championship boy, and it's a little bit like, there's a big expectancy on you, but I love how you put it so positively. Did you feel, I know it's taking it back a while, but did you feel like that at the time?
I just remember being really nervous. I think because you're going to another new environment, another new dressing room, are people going to accept me for me? I think, and ultimately you're there to be the best version of yourself. And I think I wasn't there I never went on loan with a view of, I've cracked it, because the reason I'm going on loan is to get this experience and to fight as hard as I could to get into the team to start with, because there's no guarantee. To fit into the team, to help me get into the actual team, and then work as hard as I could to stay in the team and perform. And I think so long as the clubs are supporting the players when they do go on loan, and there's always given the communication to say, this is the reason why, this is going to be a test. This is a test for you. It's a test for you physically. It will be a test for you technically. There will be things that you have at this football club you will not have at the next football club when you go on loan. But this is called experience. This is where you're going to learn what it is like at a different football club, maybe 2 tiers down, 3 tiers down. But on a development plan, this is where we want to send you to test you. And it's down to you as a character and a young player to go and perform with not everything laid out for you. And that is ultimately what you're going to come back and use in years to come in your football career. And that's what I felt when I went. And that's, like I said, the manager spoke to me, gave me the reason why, told me that it would be better for me to go and do that and see what it's like. And then ultimately it's down to me to perform, to get back. Again, I was always coming back at the end of the loan because I still had a contract. But if I didn't do well there was no way I was going to come back and play at another level above. So you have to then just keep proving along the journey the steps you're having and try and succeed within those steps. And that's how I saw it at the time. And like I said, I played every game that I was there and I was available for. So it was something I look back on and I used with him certain elements of the sort of the years that I went through, where I think, well, I've played at some tough grounds with fans giving you a little bit of abuse or a little bit of the usual sort of football chat. And I've been in these environments before. I've been in an uncomfortable setting before. So I know what it's like. You can call upon those experiences.
No, 100%. It links back to that failure aspect of, like, that's an uncomfortable situation to be in. Like you said there, the sort of, chance or whatever it may be, like being in those uncomfortable experiences, but actually, like you said, experiencing them first and foremost, and then whether it be blocking it out, whether it be sort of motivating you, whatever it may be, you've overcome that. And again, we'll get into it in a little bit, but it's clear to see how you've become a coach now, and also throughout your career you've been captain and leaders at so many clubs because of just the way you're speaking. Like it's just refreshing to hear the breakdown of it. No, it's quality. So yeah, and then obviously, then you went on loan to Crystal Palace originally, is that correct? And then you ended up going there.
So I went because Iain Dowie had left. I was on loan. My loan was coming to an end at Oldham, and then when Iain Dowie had been approached by Crystal Palace because the job had come up. Obviously, I went back to Fulham, and he went and took another jump up, which was in the Championship at the time. And it was nothing really thought about it. Just went back and thought, right, okay, I've did well there. He's gone and done well and got his move. And I was back at Fulham at the time. And then phone call came in January and said, Iain would like to now take you on loan to Palace. And I was like, wow. Obviously, it's a London club for one. It's a huge London club. It's in the Championship, and that's a big step. That's like on the back of, I think I went back in December, so there's not much time between that to sort of turn it around and go again and take the step up. But I went and ended up playing majority of the rest of that season all the way up towards the end of April, I think, when my loan had finished. And then the club managed to do so well. We got in the playoffs and got promoted through the playoffs. So, but again, looking back at the loan, I think you talk about the level of, I went into the dressing room at Oldham and tried to bed in within that environment. And then I'm now gone back within sort of, I think the period of 4 weeks, I'm now going into a championship environment with a lot of top professionals in that environment again, and a lot of standards that are again higher that you've got to get to. And it's not that you know what you're going into, because you don't, but you have to work it out. You have to see what, say, like I had a Michael Hughes, or I had a Tony Popovich, a Dougie Freeman, a Neil Shipperley that I'm going into. I'm thinking, wow, I'm now seeing what they're doing every day. This is what it obviously takes to do and be at this level. So if they're doing it and they're playing, I've got to do the same. Or if not, I've got to do even more. So I never had a fear of, I suppose, the hard work element. I never had a problem with if it was going to take everything I had to just graft, and that's all I had. That would be what I could give the game. I think that's probably where I went with my career a little bit. Along as obviously I have an understanding of the game and there's different bits, but it was just the hard work element, and I felt that if I could keep that, and that's what people saw me as, and they respected that, then that's how I fitted in. So I thought that was another sort of reason to look at that next jump, where I thought, right, it's another step up here, because I was in and around the Fulham environment, and there was top pros there, and I'd also had a foreign manager when I was younger of Jean Tigana, and saw what diet it was at like young age at 17, what it would, like the finer details of the training, what elements of the sports science that were being used, and these different sort of little gains that could be had from a European coach coming into the game. And at 17, you see a different element that was maybe an English game at the time. So I saw that, and then obviously with that knowledge as well, and the players that were around, I thought, well, there's all sorts of different ways that people are succeeding, and just trying to pick bits off everyone, really.
No, that is class. And that was going to be something I was going to pick up on about, throughout your journey, obviously, just before we talk about becoming like leader and captain at so many of these clubs that you were at, like, again, I think it goes back down to your personal characteristics, but like you just said there about picking things up from each of these individuals, like you said, you was going into in environments and dressing rooms where there was experienced pros, where there was experienced managers. Like, did you have a process as to, right, I really like this about this individual manager or player? Or was it kind of a thing of, do you know what, this has actually impacted me and it's made a difference? I'm going to take that on board and build on that.
Yeah, good and bad. And they're all good and bad. Again, the same thing. You're going to learn from both. So there was some certain aspects of my career coming through where I didn't like certain things or how people were treated, and I felt uncomfortable in those situations. So I was like, well, that's obviously not for me, because it doesn't sit well with me. And certain aspects of like, either it would be player to player, or if it would be coach to player, and how certain situations were dealt with, or how certain players would get themselves to a level to be successful consistently, and just constantly watching, observing. And I think that's what you can do. And then maybe obviously have relationships with these people. So why do you do that? Or just asking questions. I don't think there's any wrong questions, and it's just how you deliver the question. Of course, but I used to just ask people, and why do you do that? Why is that? Is that your routine, or is that a habit? And then just let people talk. And if you think, well, again, it doesn't sit well with me, or try it and it doesn't work, then what have you got to lose? Do you know what I mean? As long as that part that you feel you're willing to do it and it sits well within your, I suppose, moral compass, then why not give it a go? But I will, again, use it, asking questions all the time and sitting with people, and just, again, the observing thing. I think you can obviously focus on yourself about how you deliver your daily routine and about yourself, and deliver that to the best. But observing how people that are above you, that played longer than you, and people that are captains. And I had a good mentor, to be fair, at Palace. I had Tony Popovich, centre half. He was excellent. He played the Australian captain, and how he went about his business, how he talked to people, how he talked to people that are older than him, how he talked to fans, how he went about his daily business. And I think the ultimate, you want to be respectful to people and you want to be respected. So that's what I've taken on board from all the people that I met along my journey.
Nice quality. And again, do you know, it's interesting because as a child, we're often told to, in inverted commas, again, grow up or, you know, get certain things out of our system and become an adult. But there's two things you picked up on there, which are what children and babies do in terms of observing and asking why. And actually, when those things carry through,
lots of whys. Let me tell you, I've got 3 kids.
Exactly, and again, it's so interesting because, you know, again, constantly, sometimes in schools you'll get shut down if you ask why. It'll be like, why are we doing this? Well, just because that is the way we're doing it, or this is how it has to be done. But that inquisitive nature, like, look at how it's allowed you to absorb all this information. And then it boils back down to the decision-making process again. It's now down to you to decide, right, what do I take in? Like you mentioned, what do I take in? What do I not take in? What's not relevant to me? Once I know these key things which might be relevant, when and where am I going to use them? And most importantly, why? Why am I using them in this situation as opposed to maybe using something else? Or again, you broke down about, you know, not only just the technical things on the pitch, but, you know, about how you speak to people. Or I always say to a lot of coaches that I mentor, it's not even just about speaking half the time, it's about listening. You know, how often do you actually just listen to people? And I mean, don't get me wrong, again, some children do go on and on and on. You have to sometimes manage that. But
I understand that,
But nice, it's quality how, like you said, you have those breakdowns of those key characteristics. And I always think this as well, and it's something I'm interested in to pick up on with you on, is I almost think, and I mean, I didn't make it, so I can't say it too lightly, but I always think it's easy to become a footballer. What's the harder part is the maintaining of being a footballer, because of like all those things you mentioned.
I understand what you're saying. There's been lots, I suppose. Then there's a very small percentage that actually make it, and I would call making it playing like 100 games. Yeah. But then obviously managing to take injuries away from that, but then sustaining it over a long period of time, and staying at a level or staying in the game for a long period of time and within the league system. But yeah, there's different levels to it, and I think always adapting every year. I think you've got to constantly adapt to your environment. The game's ever changing. I think I saw a big shift in my coming through. I think obviously go back to culture was slightly different when I came through, and then you see that what comes into the game now and in the finer detail, and it's almost along the lines of not quite a sort of F1 level, but there are so many things that can help players now and are there on offer to help these players get to the very, very top. And they've got to be used in the right way. And within that football club, they've got to be, again, talk about the reasons why. This is the reason why we're using this, or this and this, and it's got to be explained. But I think, you've got to just constantly know that the game's moving forward. There's now, look at the style of the game and how it's changed and the technical aspect of it. And a lot more teams are playing that way. And there's been system shifts and an understanding of what can be gained within a possession environment. And just there's lots more to it. Not to say it wasn't, but there's a lot more, like you said at the very beginning, with a lot more understanding from coaches, a much broader range of what is on offer and what can be used within your sort of skill set, really, to make teams play certain ways. I think I got to 34 and had another European manager, German manager, come in, and I was ultimately at 34, still 33, willing to learn and see how it's done again, something different. I trained most mornings throughout my professional career. He came in and we trained in the afternoons, and we trained the specific time of what the game was we were playing. So I trained sometimes, so if we played Monday night at 7:45, we'd be training Sunday night at 7:45. So the willingness to do that is down to the individual, because ultimately you're in a club that if you're not going to do it, you ain't going to play. And I wanted to play and I wanted to try it. So you've got to, again, adapt to the environment and give it your best shot. I just think, why not? What is there to lose? You can only give everything your best shot.
No, 100% is definitely quality advice, and again, like I say, definitely see how you've grown into becoming a coach and the sort of natural fit and transition into it. Just before I do touch on the coaching, two things I just wanted to pick up on. So obviously, like I said, at all these clubs, you've been a leader, you've been an inspiration, you've been a captain. And again, it's clear to see as to why that is through the way you speak and the thought process that go behind things. But when you are a captain and you are a leader, again, sort of along that journey, do you kind of naturally go into that position, or is it something where obviously someone turns around and says, you know what, you're going to be my captain, my leader, and out of that decision making as well, of you being a leader and a captain, how much of that boils again down to your decision making in terms of what's best for the team, what's best for you as an individual? Because something I want to pick up on, which was an absolutely unbelievable goal, is when you got the goal of the season. And I mean, things like that, you know, that is decision making. That's you going, right, a lot of people, let's be honest.
I didn't make too many of those decisions, by the way.
But I mean, the thing is, if that was on like a Sunday, you know, how often would people say, no, don't shoot, don't shoot?
Yeah,
and,
no, I understand it. Yeah.
You know, going into that, and again, you being a leader and a captain and doing that, that's going to cause so much sort of inspiration to everyone else seeing you do that.
Yeah, I think I look back on, I mean, I've been asked this question before, and I think I can only think, and I know about me, is how I sort of carried myself every day. I think I was never always the loudest. I always used to try and organise on the pitch, because when I being a defender, ultimately it's going to make your job easier. But I think it was more the willingness to always, again, try everything, give everything a go. I was always trying to be polite. I think the older you get, obviously throughout your career, you're there to support as well. And I tried to be readily available if anyone needed anything. If new players came into football clubs, I'd always try and help. I'd always then maybe send them in the right direction for help. It wouldn't always land on me. But then, I can't help you with this, but maybe someone within the football club can, or contact details, or just, again, being there for people. And I think you're there to, play the game and be in a team environment, and you want people to feel comfortable, because I did it when I came through. I went into environments where there are older pros and captains within that environment, and I saw how it affected me. I felt it when I had the likes of, say, a John Sheridan at Oldham at the time, or a Chris Coleman when he was captain at Fulham at the time, or a Tony Popovich at Palace at the time. And I just saw what and how they acted, and I respected it. And I thought, well, I think I want to be respected. I want to carry myself in a certain way that I feel that is going to put me in that position. I never asked for it. It was just things that obviously people saw in me that you see in players every day, their natural habits. And I think mine would have been always on time, because I had literally used to get bellyache if I felt like I was going to be late. Trying my hardest in most, not to say that I succeeded with playing well all the time, because absolutely did I not. Just never giving in, and having that sort of relentless attitude to always try, because it's all I ever wanted to do. And then again, have this politeness and just be polite. And not to say you never get upset or frustrated with football, because that's the way the game is. But that's all right as well. But again, I used to fall out with people within the game when I played, even in the same team. Like me and Jonathan Hogg used to row all the time. He was a 6 and I was a centre half. He used to shout at me, I used to shout at him. And then off the pitch, my best mates, as soon as you walked down the tunnel, I had the same with Sean Derry when I was at Crystal Palace. He'd be saying I was doing your job most of the time, and I'd be saying, not sure you are, but yeah, row. And that was just the way it was. There's the level of, you can have that and it brings the best out of you within that moment in the game. But as soon as you come off the pitch, it was done. And again, that's the level of respect that you respect someone telling me that they're trying harder than me or doing more than me, but not taking it the wrong way. They're just trying to get me to do or perform slightly better within that game. And again, that's okay.
Yeah, 100%. And also that showing that they care. as well,
Yeah,
whether it
yeah.
be on the team aspect or for an individual aspect as well. Like you said, if they got respect for you, it's, let's be honest, because football is such a dog eat dog world in that sense, you know, especially if someone's playing in a similar position or you've got a new manager coming in, you know, let's be honest, sometimes people might just be like, well, do you know what, like, they're not, I don't really think they're that great. And do you know what? It doesn't really bother me if they go out because I can take that position, or that means that I've got more chance. But I think, yeah, when people are trying to encourage each other, definitely helps. And yeah, it's so interesting. Like at the start of this conversation where you mentioned about obviously going to Oldham, and I said, how did you feel? And you said you felt nervous. And then like many years later, it's now flipped on that switch where it's kind of the younger players coming into those environments or new players coming into those environments. And like you said, your first thought is, I need to make them feel comfortable in this environment. Because of the experiences that you've gone through. So yeah, and I find that so interesting, that sort of change over in transition as well.
Yeah, I think that comes obviously with time and growing up. Just you want to, you know, again, it's again the experience that you go through, and it's all part of your journey. I think individual journey, and again, then it's difficult to tell a young player that when they're young, and you just remember when in 10 years' time you'll be doing the same thing, and it's not possible. But you just have to articulate in a way that you're just there to help them and support them going forward, and you can then probably demand a lot from them within the day-to-day sort of aspect of the game. So if you create a supportive environment, you can definitely push each other to succeed.
100%. And picking up on that supportive environment then, like you said, and all these things which you kind of all tried to implement when new players came into the door, obviously going into the world of coaching, like, first of all, how did you find that transition, and at which stage did you kind of, because typically, again, sometimes it's, you know, I enjoy football and I want to stay within football, or did it boil down to your leadership skills of wanting to support people, wanting to help people, wanting to push people to help you transition into that world of coaching?
Well, I think it comes down. Well, I was probably about just coming towards 30, really, and it was. I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in it, because when even though I suppose it sounds like I was in it a long time, but even at just before 30, it felt like I'd been in the game a long time, and I wasn't too sure. But my wife used to say to me all the time, "You should get them done while you're playing. Get them done while you're playing," and she pushed me to start it, really, and then I wasn't really sure, and then I started the B license, and it opened my eyes again to the game. But the knowledge that you can gain of why things are being organised the way that they are, and why sessions are put on for the reasons that they are, and when you play, you think you know, and you don't. Again, you don't unless you've seen the coaching world. You don't, which. I'm not saying that you might know how the game works, but not the planning aspect of it and why the reasons that you do what you do. And I really enjoyed it. And then obviously I went and did my A, and I've just completed my pro license. And I think it was coming to sort of late 34, and the club has said, obviously I'd signed a quite long contract to 34. It was with a view to transitioning into the coaching environment and following into different parts and aspects of the football club and seeing each department and how they worked. And the club had obviously seen something in me that I could possibly do that. And then I was willing to give that a shot as well. So ultimately retired, left the game behind me, and then, but at the same football club, transitioned into following the manager, following the assistant manager, spending time in the analysis departments, the media departments, the S&C department, and just seeing how that they do things, and like technical directors, meeting lots of them along the way, and just seeing how decisions are made and what goes on behind the scenes and what goes into it daily, really. And then got offered the opportunity to take my own group with the academy, and I loved that. Thought that was the best opportunity to have your own team. And the manager, David Wagner, said to me, "Listen, I won't put any pressure on you. I'd like to see that group train and play the same way, but and how you deliver it is down to you. But there'll be no pressure from me, and good luck." And then literally go and plan, train, fail, learn again, see what you did wrong, and learn in that environment. And that, again, was brilliant.
Nice, class. And again, I always use this analogy to coaches. Always say that in a weird way, as a coach, what you're trying to do is obviously produce players, but you're also technically kind of trying to produce the next crop of coaches. Because if you can get these players with the information, like you said, the understanding and aspects of seeing certain things, and I often try and get my players or players that I may work with to put on a session. Try it. They do not have a clue. They haven't been on their coach strategies, things like that. But getting them to do that sort of situation, and typically, and this is kind of what I wanted to find out, was what you often end up finding is that, because obviously in coach courses you do technically learn some sort of sessions, but obviously the more advanced ones like the B and the A, you're kind of doing your own sessions based on your own knowledge. On that first day of coaching, did you, number one, know what to put on, and number two? Did you kind of think, I'm going to put on a session, or was it, oh, right, I know what these players need and this is why I'm going to do the session?
I can tell you right now, I remember it to this day. It was on my B license, and we were given no time whatsoever. And we were all going to take parts of a session, and you were given your topic and you had 15 minutes to prep it and you had to go out and take it. And they knew, obviously the coach educators knew that to be fair, some had been coaching along the journey and some hadn't. It was almost like, couldn't tell you where to start. I mean, like, from the amount of balls you need, the size you need, what structure it's got, the reason behind it. Like, mine was actually heading and had to end with a game, like a small-sided game with heading in it. And I was like, how on earth are you going to manage that? And we had young play, I think we were like under 14s or 13s. I was thinking, well, I could do crossing like some kind of cross and finish with a heading. And then got within the session, it's like they couldn't get the ball off the floor. I'm like, there's not going to be too much heading going on in this. But it's, again, you just feel uncomfortable. And again, I can only go back to the knowledge that I've had from, it was David Wagner at the time saying and he had a group of players that he just used to say all the time, get used to being uncomfortable. I'm going to make you out your comfort zone all the time. And that, again, is all right. And people you're not comfortable when you're in that stressed state, but you're in a supported environment. And that's where these players are at the moment. They're in supported environments that we're literally trying to stress them a little bit, make them feel uncomfortable. But at the end of the session, we're all here to say, this is why we did it. And then you learn so much more from that.
100%.
But yeah, I was really stressed, and I can tell you right now, we're not using that session ever again.
It's so funny because of the sense of, like you said, it's, and I remember as well, like I think even on my coaching course, or one of my early coaching courses, I went so red. Like, I was like, right, everyone's watching me. I don't know if I'm doing this correctly. And it's so interesting, but it's so refreshing at the same time. And again, it must be like being a player as well, because, you've got everybody watching you, you're having to make decisions on the ball. And what I wanted to try and find out, because obviously, again, you play a specific position when you are a footballer. And like you said, a lot of people will think, oh, what I know about football. And, like you said, until you see it in a coaching mode, you see it so differently. And actually, from being a defender, and you may master the position of defending and, know when to make certain decisions, but you're then all of a sudden working with midfielders, strikers, goalkeepers, people in possession, people out of possession, on the ball, around the ball, off the ball. What was that like in terms of knowing what a striker needed, midfielder needed?
Yeah. Well, I think, this is the way I've thought of it, is I've, throughout my whole career, played against strikers. Yeah. I know what they felt like. I knew what I felt like when they did well. I knew what they felt like when I did well. My closest partner someone was the keeper, was right behind me. So I was close to them pretty much all the time. I took an interest in them because the pressure comes further back. So strikers, if you miss a chance, you might get another one. Midfielders, if you miss a pass, you're probably going to get another one. Defenders, if you miss a pass or make a mistake, your keeper's going to have to help you out. And if he makes one, it's a goal. So I've always had a sort of level of respect for all the different units. again, midfielders, how they helped me out throughout games and how we would organise them in front of us. And so there's an understanding of all the different departments. And again, people say, well, if you're a defender, you're going to be really good at coaching defence, like the defensive unit. And I find it fascinating because there's so much that you can see from being a defender. A central defender, you pretty much see the whole game. So do keepers. Strikers are not normally on the move the whole time and might not, but as a defender, you predominantly see most of the game. So yeah, you have an understanding of what good movement looks like from strikers, who used to cause you trouble, why they did what they did, and so yeah, you see it all different ways. And set out, obviously, you talk about centre mids, and you look at someone like a Pirlo and had the game on a 360-degree pivot, didn't he? So he obviously had an awareness of everything around him and not just his own position. I think that's the way I sort of looked at it as a game. They all cross over.
100%. And it's those building of relationships. I can always talk about identifying, like you just said there, who's your nearest relationships. If you're a centre back, is it going to be the left back, goalkeeper, centre midfielder, potentially left winger? Who's your associates? So it might be the right winger, the striker. So you're always knowing kind of when you're in these different decisions, like who do you need to support, who can you play with. And yeah, it's interesting because, like I say, it just goes in from and the thing is that I know that the coaching course has kind of moved away from that. They used to have ones where it was developing defenders, and there's a specific midfielder course, specific striker course, but now it's obviously all generic areas of coaching. And I know you said that the world of football's come along, and now you have certain potential coaches in different positions. And I mean, even I think at Wimbledon as well, they've got people such as restart coaches. Somebody else I had on here was a throwing coach. So it's crazy how the world has evolved now, but also as well how specialized you can become in certain realms of coaching.
No, of course. No, and I agree. I think down to each football club, that depends on what you want to cover. I think from my point of view, I think I'd like to have an understanding of all aspects of it, because I think and that's what I feel that suits me. But again, I can understand a coach wanting to focus on an out of possession and another one on an in possession. I can understand that. It maybe specify what you're looking for. And again, that's just down to each individual in the football club. And that, again, is the beauty of football, I suppose, because it can be done so many different ways.
100%. Nice, brilliant. And kind of just looking at the more current times now, obviously, made that transition, and I believe only recently as well, obviously going across to Cardiff and now working within sort of like the first team coaching setup, and obviously got Steve Morrison down there. And again, even for himself, that's obviously a relatively new position to be in as well. How are you finding that project and again, being back at Cardiff as well?
Yeah. I think obviously when the call came to go back to that, it's obviously a great opportunity and something I was never going to turn down. And then I think I couldn't tell you where the weeks go. I couldn't tell you what week we're on, but it's something that I love doing and have a smile on my face every day. Couldn't tell you how much it sort of means. Obviously, family know. There's obviously the sort of the move element that comes with football, and I just think it's a great opportunity, and we're here to try and ultimately succeed. So we've got a long way to go, and a lot of games to go. So it's something you just got to enjoy. I think if you don't enjoy it, then what's the point really? Like I said, it's about playing the game, and I enjoyed it when I played it, and you've got to enjoy it while you're coaching it. I think that's what you're there to do, to make players better and ultimately support them along their journey. And I think that's what it's about.
No, 100%. Honestly, I've got nothing but respect for that, and obviously wish you every bit of luck for the remainder of the season. Honestly, Mark, it's been number one, a breath of fresh air. Like just hearing the way, like I said, you come across the sort of, your sort of processes in which you think about, the way you like bring it out as well, the way you execute it, kind of what you're now transitioning into the coaching world. And you can see, like I said early on in the conversation, you can see as to, you all have all the personal characteristics. And I think strip the football away from it, like this is you, as opposed to just being a footballer, just being a coach. These are all your values. These are all your, position statements as well. So, honestly, it has been an absolute breath of air. It's been a pleasure having you on here. It's been a really good insight, and I'm sure that many listeners are going to take things away from this. So, all I can say
I'm
is
grateful
thank you so much.
for you inviting me on. So, thank you to you, and keep up the good work.